Trevor agreed to a new contract a week ago, but today he showed up and signed it. Sometimes you just got to pop out. We'll tell you what it was all about today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is a fact. It is your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find at our YouTube page. That is Locked On Jaguars. Go over there, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then hit that bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And then wherever you get your audio podcast, I don't know, when you're sneaking at work or driving in your car, make sure wherever that is, you tap in every single day to make sure you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And shout out to all of the everydayers who listen to the show every single day. You can be one if you're not. All you got to do is listen to the show every single day. All right, so Trevor is signed, sealed, and delivered. We will land at a destination that leads us to talking about how the expectations will now change with the money. And really, I don't think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to actually get better because, well, I'll explain that in segment 3. Is it a bargain or not? I think the deal was structured in a way that really helps the team, and Trevor even talked about that being one of his goals. I'll tell you why I believe it's a bargain. I've gone over that before, but we'll go over it again. But finally, we're going to start right here by not burying the lead and just tell you that he's officially signed his deal. He was with his wife, Maritza, and they signed the contract today. I believe he was guaranteed X amount of dollars at signing, over $100 million at signing. So everybody's happy today, right? And Trevor says it's not going to change anything for him, what his expectations are. He's just going to go out and play football and continue to do the things that he has done. It really signaled, if you were wondering what his mindset was, he talked extensively about the fact that he really wanted the deal. He wanted the deal to be, market value, but he wanted to also structure the deal in a way that allows the Jaguars to help his teammates. He doesn't want to break up a team just getting his money and then lose a lot. So good for him to be thinking that way. It's not necessarily the Tom Brady discount, but I do believe they did structure the contract in a certain way that does allow the Jaguars to have flexibility. So much talk about whether or not he's worth it or not. And I'm not sure what people are thinking. Like, sometimes when they have that discussion, they really do compound a whole bunch of different arguments. And I worked in a barbershop. I still do part-time for 32 years. Folks know how to frame a discussion or an argument. So you have to answer one of their questions, or you have to answer a question that has some stuff attached to it that makes it seem like you agree to what they're saying. I know when I watch court shows, I always hear lawyers say, when they object, to say assumes facts not in evidence, or they're leading people. And I think a lot of times that's what happens, because talking about Trevor Lawrence being officially signed by the Jaguars and thinking that the Jaguars somehow jumped the gun, blew this, gave him the money too early, gave him the money before he proved anything. I think it really is a reflection of people just wanting to be right about something and wanting their feelings. Now imagine this, wanting their feelings and what they think they see to dictate what really is. The Jaguars are way more informed about Trevor Lawrence than anybody that has a negative opinion about him getting his money. I love the fact that people always say he ain't worth it, but then they can't tell you where they can go find somebody who is worth it. Because all of that is trading a guy away, getting a draft pick, and then using another draft pick on another unproven player. Folks can never really point out to why a guy isn't worth the money. I saw a graphic today that blew my mind. They showed the last 50 starts between Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott. And they're like even in wins and losses. And I don't want to get caught up in just looking at stats to make my points, because it's things like that that actually make me tell people to stop using statistics only as a measuring stick or as the evidence or the proof that a guy, because that's what they do to Trevor. They use the stats, especially the ones that make their argument correct. They use those stats. And what they do is they use that as an argument against Trevor, and they don't really watch the games. Or when they do watch the games, they don't have a one lick of understanding. And this is why it's important to listen to local people, not just me, everybody. But they don't have a lick of understanding of the context around what they see. Even the best coaches will look at tape and go, well, maybe they were asking him to do. I don't know what he was asked. They were asking him to do. I know what he's supposed to do if they're lined up like that, but it doesn't seem like somebody was asking him to do. At some point, we can always question coaching. At some point, we can always question personnel and teammates. I would see if Trevor Lawrence was making a bunch of mistakes because he was scared, and he's not. He's not afraid. In fact, if he makes mistakes, it's because he's trying to do too much, and I believe the trying to do too much is because of play calls that are a result of subpar talent at some of these positions and things that they really, really want to do. So, yeah, I'm glad Trevor Lawrence officially signed. It signals a lot moving forward. It also signals a lot that former players like Zay Jones, who just left here to go to Arizona, they're saying good things about him. And that's another thing that you can't discount. I don't know how many times over the years I've talked on this podcast on Locked On Jaguars about how players feel about other players being important. We saw the Jaguars give money to a bad player, and they had the kind of players on the team at the time that was going to tell you they shouldn't have done it. Whether that's right or not, but the bottom line is that is not happening here. That's not happening in Jacksonville. And if the Jaguars don't pay Trevor Lawrence, somebody's going to do it. I'm telling you, he's going to get that money from somebody else. I don't know if every team in the league would have done it, but a whole bunch of them would have. So, I mean, we have to learn to really see things for what they are as opposed to trying to match it up to our logic about whether or not somebody. Well, I have no problem with Trevor Lawrence being given an extension. In fact, I'm all for it. I think he's worth it. I do believe that they have improved this team enough that those things that other people use to determine whether or not somebody has value or not, like stats, they're going to go up. So will the wins. The wins will go up. That doesn't mean I don't believe that he doesn't have things that he needs to improve on. Absolutely. I think there's things that Trevor needs to do better, and he knows that. I think everybody. But see, knowing that, and they say, well, how can you give him $275 if he still needs to improve on things? Because everybody who gets money needs to improve on things. They all do. There's no quarterback. Now, Patrick Mahomes can stay who he is for the rest of his career, and that'll be fine. But I think he would even tell you that there's things that he needs to do better. So he's officially signed. Trevor Lawrence is officially signed. I'm going to tell you why I believe it is a bargain. I'm going to, bargain or not is what we have called segment 2. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a bargain. It's a bargain with some stipulations to it. And most of them are about what has to happen in the future on a positive level. But I have no idea that those things are going to happen. So I'll tell you why Trevor Lawrence getting that money, getting that Skrilla, is a bit of a bargain for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll do all of that in segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. But I will let you know first about the Gametime app, man. Time to buy you some tickets. Baseball games, man. Visit baseball. You got a little bit of room. If you're going on vacation, you got a lot of room between training camp. The NBA finals are done. The NHL is getting real close. With baseball, all you got to do, man, is find a game you want to go to and download the Gametime app, and you'll be able to get it. Even if it's a last-minute deal, like something that just comes up, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and whatever. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to games and concerts, and download the Gametime app and create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and get a redeem code. I'll give it to you right here. I'm going to spell it for you. Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And we are still off and running here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Trevor Lawrence is officially signed. And I think the Jaguars got him at a bit of a bargain, even though it's $53 million a year, $275 million in total value, and $142 million guaranteed. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of somebody else's money for me to be sitting here telling you that I think it's a bargain. But I will not lie to you. Might lie on you, but I ain't going to lie to you. I think it's a bargain, and here's why. The point that I made a couple of weeks ago, I'll make it again, or last week, and I'll make it again. Even if you heard it, you got to just bear with me and listen to me one more time. The reason why it's a bargain is because they built the team and they fortified the team enough that Trevor Lawrence numbers are going to go a little bit higher than they were last year. They'll be better than they were last year, just like a year before last. They were better, and last year the numbers sort of went down a little bit. And the Jaguars, everybody talks about how the Jaguars are 8-3 and they were rolling along. Trevor's stats really at that point were not that great. We all remember the defense was leading the team. The defense probably were first or second in the league in turnovers. And at that time, the Jaguars have had a lot of good fortune, despite the fact that they really weren't playing well. So that's another thing that people kind of, when they say that, well, they were 8-3 before he got hurt, against the Bengals or whatever. I kind of got to remind people that they were 8-3. But we were still waiting on the offense. We were waiting on things to click. And we were just, there was the big debate of wondering if that was sustainable, or there was the other side of it, in which the side that I took is they were playing about this way last year and they were 2-7, but somehow they managed to win these games. And that's what good teams do. Good teams win even when they're not playing well. Now, just wait until they really start clicking. The problem is he got hurt and they never started clicking offensively. I think the best offensive game they had was the game that they played in Houston, where Trevor went ballistic. He could have had 400 yards had they not been dropping balls, but they still won the game and beat a hot Houston team on the road. That was their best game of the season, in my opinion, and that was the game that I always talk to when people say, how did Trevor get this contract extension? I'll tell them to go look at that game. I don't tell them to go look at the second half of the Chargers playoff game, because by doing that, you're cherry picking, because they might say, well, what if I want to watch the first half too? Because the first half will definitely tell those folks that want to say that Trevor is very good. They'll have a reason why, and they'll say, no, man, you can't have a guy that's up and down like that. That's Jameis Winston type stuff. So I always point to the Houston game, and I remind people that when they make the argument that, they'll look at the second half of the season prior in 2022, when they were 2-7 and they ended up 9-8. So that's 7-1, and when you add that to an 8-3 start, they'll go, he was 15-4 in 19 games. You don't have to do that, man. You don't have to frame your argument in order just to get people to listen to it and believe it, because if you have to do all of that, they're not going to do it anyway. It is a bargain for them to get Trevor Lawrence at the number that they got him at. Watch when Jordan Love eclipses it and Tua Tagovailoa eclipses those numbers, then people are going to say, oh, man, it's Trevor Lawrence's fault. No, it isn't, because had those guys signed before Trevor Lawrence and Trevor Lawrence would have eclipsed their numbers, then guess what people would have been saying? He ain't worth it. Trevor is a target because of the expectations that people had on him when he was at Clemson. And folks are still, every time somebody calls him California or Sunshine because of his long flowing locks, and Nick Wright calls him the prince that whoever. Every time they do that, they put pressure on athletes. And I know the athletes themselves don't pay attention, but it puts the type of pressure, almost gives the rabbit the gun, and it puts a bullseye on a dude who's just going to work every day minding his business. And then that hyperbole is what we end up arguing about and judging people about, and it has nothing to do with the real point. Case in point, right now, I'm just do this real fast. All of the Caitlin Clark discourse that's going on, it's now about whether or not she is a pretty good player or not, and whether or not she's box office, and whether or not how good she'll ever be, and the fact that, she doesn't have to be that good, but she's box office and she's what people want to see. All that she has to do is bomb threes. That is not the argument that was being had before she went to play in the WNBA. The argument is that she was the greatest women's basketball player ever. You see what happened? Everybody switched, and now these arguments that everybody's having, they aren't even the ones that they had when they first started. And that's the same thing that happens to Trevor Lawrence and players like that. It's not about, in my opinion, whether he's worth it, because if you want to use stats to determine that, then his stats line up with a lot of people that got similar money. You want to talk about whether he's worth it or not, have that argument about Jalen Hurts, not Trevor Lawrence. Jalen Hurts had one good season. And last year looked like he was out of sorts a little bit. And there was a lot of fussing and arguing with a guy that is a really, really good receiver on the sideline. But nobody talks about it. You know why? Because Jalen wasn't a first-round pick. Jalen's a guy that got benched at Alabama, came in, had a lot of class, stayed, helped the team, and then went to Oklahoma and had another good season. It is not the same as a guy who's been the number one quarterback ever since he was 15 years old. And the lens that people view him through is a lot different. And no matter what you tell them, no matter how much water you splash on their face to try to tell them to shake out of it, they are still looking at him as if he is supposed to be the next coming of whoever's going to, like, if he's supposed to be what Peyton Manning was to Tom Brady. That's what Trevor is supposed to be to Patrick Mahomes if he's going to live up to people's expectations. It doesn't work that way, because in football, you always walk into different types of situations and you don't always get the chance to have everything perfectly lined up for you. And Trevor certainly has not since he's been in Jacksonville. I'd love to get people, those national folks, that always, say the right things when they talk about, well, it's more than just X's and O's, and it's more than this, and it's more than that. It's player development. It's what situation you put them in. And I didn't come up with the term that more bad organizations ruin quarterbacks good players than bad players ruin good organizations. I didn't come up with that. You know where I got all that from? I got all of that from the TV speak over the years that I've heard from guys who have coached, guys who have played. But somehow, some way, that disappears when they talk about Trevor, and the only thing that they use are empty statistics, or if they're coming in here to preview or review a game, maybe looking at game tape from the week prior, and then using the expectations that we talked about because of where he was drafted and who he was and all the noise that was made around it. And somehow these opinions keep coming up. And for people that watch closely and for people that study the game and see the Jaguars up close on a daily basis, that's almost like somebody in the second grade sitting there talking to you, and you got a PhD in the subject that they're talking about. They have no clue. None. Sometimes it ain't even got to be that deep. Okay, if you look at the TV and you say, okay, he has it or he doesn't have it, that's cool if you don't think Trevor Lawrence is, because we ain't trying to change nobody's mind. The bottom line is it doesn't matter what people it doesn't even really matter what we think, but it really doesn't matter what people who don't cover the team or who don't watch the team closely thinks. The majority of the fans believe that Trevor Lawrence is worth the money. And the ones that don't believe he isn't worth the money, they're not paying attention to this. And what this is they've improved the team around him. His numbers are going to go up. So if you're just a stats guy, guess what? His stats next year might even tell you that he's supposed to be getting a bigger payday. And that will be way bigger than the $53 million they gave him now. It'll be closer to 60. So if you're a head coach and a GM who need things to improve over the next 2 years, you think you've gone out and done those things that make the team improve, why wouldn't you extend him now? Because if it doesn't work, you're going to get fired in 2 years anyway. And his extension will be somebody else's problem. But if it does work, somebody's going to look at you next year and say, why didn't you re-sign him last year? Well, you could have gave him 53. Now I got to give him even more. So it's a win-win situation for Trevor, for the organization, for Doug, and for Trent Baalke. So if you don't think he deserves the money, tell me what they're supposed to do. Just sit here and let these 2 years play out. Okay, what if he's an all-pro? What do you do then? Well, I guess the best thinking is that, well, we'll have a better idea. I'll be willing to pay more because we'll have a better idea for what we're paying for. Yeah, and you'll run this organization in the ground doing that instead of just putting your finger on the pulse of the team and making a decision whether it's popular or not. That's why fans and people like me don't have to do the job that the general manager and those guys have to do. It's a little bit different. I'll tell you what's a little bit different also. what you watch on TV. If you watching TV and get tired of guys yelling and screaming on those sports shows, then fine. You don't have to turn down the volume. All you got to do is switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to tell you about those changing expectations and how I believe the expectations are actually going to go down for Trevor Lawrence. I'll do that in just a second here. Third and final segment of Locked On Jaguars. Summertime means baseball. The NBA Finals and more gone and passing us by. You can get all into baseball and bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the MVP of the baseball season to who's going to win a division and on your individual teams and games. And I like the fact that they separate Yankees when you have Yankees and Red Sox. I love that, right? You can hit out of the park with FanDuel. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Take a look at those bullpens, man. You better find out who has that good pitching because it'll fool you sometime in baseball. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. All right, man, as always, we have to talk about the expectations moving forward about the things that we talked about in segment 1 and segment 2. And we'll get right to it right now, and I'll do it for you. Listen, coming out of Clemson, the expectations were sky high because of the success that Trevor Lawrence had, all of the hype following his recruitment. He lived up to it as a true freshman and beat Nick Saban in Alabama, and they blew him out, right, for a big national championship, played in the playoffs, played in another championship game against LSU, and they lost in the playoffs against Ohio State. The thing that I know that people hold on to that criticize Trevor Lawrence so much is every time you've seen him have a subpar game, they've all looked just alike. Now that is about as true as it can get. When you watch him struggle, the struggle looks the same. It's not like he has problems with this thing today and then he has problems with that thing tomorrow. All of his games seem to he'll have these weird falls. It looks like he's getting torn apart. You know what I'm saying? His body's getting all twisted. Pressure's getting to him. But that's not necessarily on him. That is like, okay, somebody ain't blocking somebody, right? So that would mean that people might start to think that he just struggles under pressure. Does not struggle under pressure. In fact, Trevor Lawrence is really, really good under pressure. Go watch his highlights and go watch those games. If anything, I think all those struggle games looking like, because at those point in times, all of those teams had struggle things going on at common positions, and that's why they looked alike. You can't block people; your quarterback's going to be running for his life. Period. Point in the discussion. The only other criticism I have of Trevor Lawrence is he comes out really, really hyped early in games, and he throws the ball high. Early on, he's really, really exciting. His arm is really alive, and he throws the ball high. That may be something that they can change over time. That may be something that game plan can help. But whatever it is, I expect that to be something that gets cleaned up over the next, couple of years as he continues to grow as a quarterback and he can control that. And it might be an emotional thing, right? And you might be able to play call him through that until he's really, really ready to go. But I do think the expectation is going to change for the better. Because being a pro, people have seen a lot of people get overpaid. People have seen, I like the fact that people are not going to focus on the money and whether or not he's worth the $275 million, as opposed to now still focusing on whether or not he's going to live up to this imaginative superhero sports guy that they had that gave all these nicknames and all these monikers to, and thinking that he has to live up to that. Because living up to that was like Superman. I mean, he's supposed to be like the next coming of everything, right? That's why I don't like when Nick Wright calls him the prince, whatever he calls him. I don't like things being assigned to people. I don't like positive adjectives being assigned to people before they actually earn them. Because all it does is I think the people that say it thinks it makes them look smart, but really it just adds certain media pressure and it creates certain narratives that guys just shouldn't have. I guarantee you, if Trevor Lawrence was the 15th pick in the first round and his hair wasn't long like that, and maybe he hadn't won that national championship at such an early age, if he was the 15th overall pick and he was playing for a team and it came time to re-sign him right now, I guarantee you nobody would have a whole bunch of problems with it. Because they really look at, okay, man, you can't give up on this young dude, man. That's a good quarterback. Remember when they traded Jared Goff from the Rams and everybody was like, man, why are they giving up on this dude for an older quarterback, man? And then there was some other people that are like, yeah, but you already see what that is. And now Jared Goff's making almost the same money as Trevor Lawrence. And that's exactly my point. Goff was picked like number 1 or number 2 in the draft. I think he was picked second. Might have been picked first in that year with Carson Wentz. But the difference is it didn't come with all of the other hype and the nicknames and all of that stuff. How much money has Carson Wentz made from more than one different team? And nobody, so people don't call him bust. They just say people screwed him over. Because once you just talk about the money aspect of it, we've seen that so many times before that's not going to surprise anybody. But the hype that was bestowed upon Trevor Lawrence before he became a Jaguar it was out of control. It was out of control. I even hated that we had people here saying, just draft Trevor, get him the ball and get out of the way. We had live media people saying when he was a rookie, they shouldn't do anything without consulting him. Everything should run through him. And I'm sitting there saying that is the biggest mistake in the world. Let him grow up first. How about y'all go run everything through your kids right now? Or if you got a 20-year-old or 21-year-old coming out of college, just ease your air. Just go run everything. It just didn't make sense to do that because folks were allowing their enthusiasm about the promise that he could. That was the Prince of Promise. That's what it was. The promise and what he could possibly bring the team. They wanted to put him in position to already make those decisions before he was ready. He had to be a rookie. He had to learn. This is what this is a part of that argument with women's basketball right now. You don't put people in positions they aren't ready for, because what you're doing is you're setting them up for failure, or you're setting them up for narratives that will exist that really shouldn't exist. And the only reason they exist is because people that cover the teams have an ego and they want to be the guy that sounds smart and sounds first. But it just created an atmosphere that Trevor Lawrence was never going to live down until he signed this contract. So now people won't focus on that. They'll focus on this, but the focus on this is a focus that we've seen before. And it's one that is relative to other people that are in his same position that have this money. And what if they're not playing well? Right. So, I mean, but there was nothing to compare that to. So therefore, the expectations of all of that was just going to be overwhelmingly high. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to earn this money. He talks about winning a championship. I think he has what it takes to win a championship too. Matter of fact, mark my word, within the next 6 years, the Jaguars will be a team that has a Lombardi trophy in their case. I just feel that good about where they're going. Now, you notice I said 6. I ain't say the next 2. Because we still got to see about some people that are making some decisions over there. But so far, so good. You guys make sure you check out Locked On Sports today, man, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV, free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Y'all can find me here same time, same place tomorrow with another edition of Locked On Jaguars. Until then, you guys take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.